The DA is campaigning in Ekurhuleni, where it hopes to take over the municipality. Well, for more on this, let's cross to our SABC reporter, Yolisa and Njamela. Thanks very much, Yolisa, for joining us. Just tell us what's happening on the ground where you are.
Crisscrossing the length and breadth of the country, Nombu, politicians are using the few weeks before that all-important election on the 1st of November to woo voters. They're going all around to ensure that voters choose their own parties. They're also using this time to put a spotlight and highlight issues that communities and residents often complain about. In this area, in Ekurhuleni, in an area called Angelo, we are following the Democratic Alliance, who are coming to address residents here. John Steenhuisen, the party's leader, and Refilo Nzege, who is the mayoral candidate here in Ekurhuleni, will be addressing the residents of Angelo, who are living in an area that used to be a mine. And the DA tells us that they do not have access to water, they don't have access to sanitation and other means of life, and that the ANC has wasted over 23 million rand trying to relocate these people from an area to another area. But we've got Refilo Nzege to tell us more about why exactly they are here and what they intend to tell the residents here. Refilo, thank you so much for joining us. If you were to briefly tell us, why are you here today?
Thank you so much. Obviously, through our councillor, Ashley Radford, we've been highlighting this issue through asking questions in council to say, why was 23 million rand spent on these residents? And the indication is that they wanted to move these residents of what is potentially a mine shaft from there to another informal settlement. The residents are very angry about this matter because they are saying you cannot move them from a shack dwelling to another shack dwelling. Unfortunately, what the residents do not understand is even though there's a ward councillor, we are still at the mercy of an ANC-led administration to ensure that these people are moved to proper housing. 23 million was spent here, as you have said, but even worse, this particular municipality has returned a housing grant of 250 million back to Treasury. It would have been better if when people are moved, they find a permanent site by auditing the land and then move people to RDP houses or housing opportunities where there's service stands. As you said, there's no water and there's no electricity and sewer. At the very least, when we talk about housing opportunities, we talk about stands where a person would have storage and water, running water. Then electricity would be brought in after they've blocked the informal settlement. That would have been the right thing to do had we been in government here in Ekurhuleni. But 23 million rand has gone down the drain. A further 4 million was wasted on the red ends to make sure that they actually look after the shacks that they had erected on the other area where they wanted to move the residents to.
So when did you know about this, Refilo? And I'm asking this in particular because I'm trying to find out why now. Is this part of electioneering?
I think the reality of how things work is Councillor Ashley Hoods, which is the ward councillor of this area, has been driving this issue. That's why we can refer to questions in the municipality that were tabled and the responses from the ANC administration itself. So obviously, as I go through the length and breadth of the municipality, people want to know what has been done. And he has brought it to me as something to prioritize when we take over government. And as a senior member, he is hoping that we are able to escalate this matter. Over and above being a mayoral candidate, you will recall that I'm still a sitting MPL. So the onus will also be on me to hopefully, if we don't win the metro, which I plan to, but also to hold MEC Maile to look at Kokta and understand how we could have wasted, how this municipality wasted the 23 million and the 4 million and returned 250 million back to Treasury when people are living in squalor with no storage, no running water, no electricity.
So what are you coming to tell them?
I think the importance of showing to people is when you elect a government that has now taken you for granted, the onus is on you to understand the power of your vote. The councillor here is a DA councillor. But until the people understand that he works underneath an ANC administration, they will still live in this squalor of money being returned and fruitless and wasteful expenditure that we have seen. Because how can people be staying in shacks and 23 million rand has been wasted?
And as you come through here to speak to the people, Refilo, you're also dealing with internal wrangles, internal matters that possibly are distracting to you as you go on a campaign. Mike Waters, who's a campaigns manager here in Ekurhuleni, has resigned with immediate effect, and it has to do with the party taking down and apologizing for the posters that were in Phoenix. Now, he called the party treacherous and spineless.
Yes, Mike Waters is the campaign manager for the region, but I am lucky in the sense that I have a different campaign manager, and I have Annette as my campaign manager, Fester. So my campaign is continuing undisturbed. But luckily, I think the DA has a very good system, because Mike had a deputy in the form of Matt Cuthbert, who looks at the functioning of all our constituencies. So immediately when Mike made a decision that he chooses to resign, Matthew Cuthbert, who had deputized him, has immediately assumed the responsibility. So we haven't had a disturbance in the campaign management of the Gauteng East in totality. So our troops are still on the ground, continuing to work, because ultimately we know that the residents of Ekurhuleni cannot continue on 27 years of ANC imprisonment. What they need is an assistant from a political party that will get good things done, which have a track record of good governance. And so we are not wavered. Mike, it's his personal decision. We wish him well. He said truly served the Democratic Alliance well when he was in Parliament, and even when he was a campaign manager. We acknowledge that he wants to differ from the decision made by the leadership. That's his discretion, and he's free to. South Africa says you've got freedom of association. I wish him well. He's a good friend, and it's a pity that we've lost him within our ranks in terms of leaving as a campaign manager. But he has not left the organization. He still says he's going to remain a member of the Democratic Alliance. But for me, my priority is win Ekurhuleni, because I believe that I have hope and I have a vision that will transform this organization, this municipality, and bring hope for people such as the people of Angelo, which we see behind.
Thank you so much, Refilo. I'm afraid we have to wrap it. We continue with this conversation with Refilo a little later on. For now, I just want to highlight, before taking it back to the studio, that as soon as we gathered here, before even the DA came through, once community members here saw cameras, they saw media, and they realized that perhaps this is a good time for them to ventilate their issues. And there's a whole lot of arguments going over there as we speak. But we will chat with the community members and ventilate their issues and highlight them.
Thanks very much, my colleague there, Yolisa Njamela.